16 years ago, the world was nearly wiped out by a virus. People tried to flee, but soon, every major city was filled with corpses. It was a week of madness. It even became global news. Now, the virus may have been a glitch, but it almost wiped out Azeroth, and it's actually super relevant to our world today.
Well, how did the players behave during the plague? Was it close to how people behaved during the real-world epidemic? And the answer, actually somewhat surprisingly at the time, is yes.
World of Warcraft's Corrupted Blood incident is one of the game's most legendary events. Players new and old still bring it up to this day, despite the fact that it happened back in 2005 when the game was barely a year old. It all began with patch 1.7.0, which introduced a new raid, Zul'Gurub. Zul'Gurub is a 20-man raid located in Stranglethorn Vale, where players have to fight through tough enemies to face off against the final boss, Hakar the Soulflayer. And one of Hakar's abilities is Corrupted Blood, a debuff that deals damage over time and also spreads to other players around those affected by it. It's basically poison. Corrupted Blood was supposed to be a nuisance for players to overcome as they battled Hakar within the confines of the raid, and only the raid. See, whether the player was healed and survived the debuff or died during the encounter, Corrupted Blood was never supposed to make it out of the boss fight. Blizzard was pretty thorough in making sure players didn't leave the raid with Corrupted Blood, but they forgot about the pets.
Kevin!
So when shamans and warlocks summoned their pets to help fight Hakar, they too got infected with Corrupted Blood. And once the pet was resummoned outside of the raid, they were free to infect their master and anyone else around them. We don't know which pet was the first to unleash the virus, but we do know the outbreak began on the Archimon server.
Oh no, it isn't.
This sucks, I can't get infected.
Maybe it's like a new strategy for Hakar. Just pass it around until you get immune.
Corrupted Blood spread across WoW like crazy. Players were spreading Corrupted Blood to other players and even NPCs. That's right, you could stay away from real human beings and still die because unkillable NPCs were constantly transmitting the Corrupted Blood. Remember, this was 2005. Social media was not what it is today. So a lot of people had a hard time figuring out what the hell was going on.
What the hell is even that?
Conversations were spread out around various internet forums as players desperately tried to figure out why huge cities like Orgrimmar and Ironforge were now uninhabitable. And when I say uninhabitable,
You know what? I'm about to say it.
I mean lower level players died almost instantly to Corrupted Blood because it was balanced for high level raiders. High population areas were filled with the skeletons of players who had fallen victim to the plague. Healers did their best to help the afflicted, but by keeping an infected player alive, they were just increasing the odds that that player would spread the plague to everyone else, including the healer. Other Good Samaritans tried to save the uninformed and the underleveled by telling them to avoid major cities and instead to head for the wilderness or designated safe zones that the plague hadn't hit yet. Now, you might be wondering why players were afraid to die. I mean, players die in video games all the time. Besides the tedious corpse run, the answer is basically repair costs. See, in vanilla WoW, it costs a lot to fix busted gear.
Wow, what the
This
f***,
is some
Mysterio?
bullshit. This is some bullshit. This is some bullshit. This is some bullshit. This is some bullshit.
You what? Mysterio, just... Why are you in here, Mysterio? What the f*** is your deal?
And while some players had enough money not to care, other more casual victims of the plague could risk digital bankruptcy. But then there were the trolls, the players that reveled in the chaos and wanted to help spread Corrupted Blood all throughout the server. In a 2019 Blizzard forum thread, user Oshuni recounted an experience when he played as a priest during the pandemic and talked about how players would get pissed at him if he tried to remove the debuff. Yeah, the Corrupted Blood incident turned players into fucking bioterrorists who walked around the world spreading the infection. By now, the game was nearly unplayable, but players still had no idea what was happening. They weren't sure if this was all intentional or an insane bug. And the players weren't the only ones talking. WoW's baffling plague made international news.
A computer game is providing us with a remarkable virtual view of what could happen if a real epidemic erupted across the globe.
So at this point you might be wondering, where was Blizzard in all of this? Well, they were actually just as stumped as the players as to how corrupted blood made it out of Zul'Gurub. Blizzard tried rolling out a hotfix 4 days into the pandemic, but it didn't work. Meanwhile, Blizzard assured players that their medical staff was hard at work trying to develop a cure. The corrupted blood pandemic continued to wreak havoc for around a week before players began to realize that pets were to blame for everything. And then, it was all over.
It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.
In patch 1.8, Blizzard confirmed that pets were the problem and prevented Hakar's corrupted blood from affecting pets. As Azeroth's pandemic wound down and the digital doctors got to take a break, the real doctors started to pay attention. Academics wrote multiple scholarly papers about the incident and how this case study could benefit epidemiology research. These papers cited similarities between corrupted blood and real-life pandemics at the time, like the SARS outbreak in the early 2000s. Dr. Nina Pfefferman, one of the authors of these papers, even gave a presentation at GDC 2011 about the usefulness of this WoW outbreak in her own research as an epidemiologist.
The important thing to us was to see the diversity of response. And the ones that we were looking at epidemiologically were the ones, what are the things we hadn't thought to include in our models? When we guess in our models, when we say, what should be happening, what could happen, and we guess, what did we forget to include? And that's where things like curiosity really helped us, because we'd never thought of that. What happens if people rush into a quarantine?
And today, the case is more relevant than ever. According to a PC Gamer interview with Dr. Pfefferman and the paper's co-author, Dr. Eric Lofgren, there are real parallels between corrupted blood and COVID. In WoW, griefers spread the virus. In the real world, some people are willfully ignoring risks and potentially infecting others in their community.
I'll beat that mask off your face and I'll You're a bunch of wearing masks! Loser!
Goodbye!
But the corrupted blood event wasn't just helpful to academics, it also benefited WoW as a game. In a 2019 interview, the WoW devs admitted, quote, if that had never happened, they would never have had the wherewithal to create some of the cool events they have now, end quote. The corrupted blood incident all started because of a glitch, but that glitch turned into an unforgettable moment in gaming history, one that bizarrely still has a positive impact on our world today. It was a happy accident. Sure, it was contagious and deadly, but still, a happy accident.